The following is a non-profit fan-based translation of another fan-created work of fiction. Mobile Suit Gundam. Advanced Operation is owned by Sunrise Entertainment, Bandai Entertainment, and Family Soft Koisa, Lightdeed. Support the official release of both the game and the other works of the original author. Mobile Suit Gundam Advanced Operation by Sonku Inoue. Prologue. You're really going, aren't you? As I looked at my sister's figure through the monitor, I knew I couldn't stop her any further. Haman Karn, the de facto leader of the Neo-Zeon forces, rarely wore a normal suit when piloting a mobile suit. It was a testament to her absolute confidence in her skills and her unwavering, overwhelming demeanor that earned her a near-deified level of loyalty from her subordinates. But now, my sister, who could even be described as arrogant, was wearing a normal suit. I couldn't remember the last time I had seen her in one. It must have been during a time that felt so nostalgic, so undeniably happy. It was a sign of how far apart we had grown. The divide between my sister, who advocated for the purge of Earth, and me, who called for a policy of reconciliation, was vast and deep. Srana, I've come to understand what you've been saying now, but there must be closure, even if the cost is my life. Her parting words were spoken with a face that seemed almost refreshingly clear. Her pale, translucent skin, her faint red hair, and the deep indigo of her normal suit created a striking contrast, accentuating her expression, a mix of sorrow and resolve. She looked endlessly beautiful, endlessly strong, and yet, somehow fragile. The conflict now known as the Neo-Zeon War had reached its final stages. The fleet accompanying the flagship Satalan had dwindled to a mere handful of ships. Communications with our homeland, Side 3, were disrupted by the dense Minovsky particles, and the monitor was filled with static, distorting the refined faces of Haman and Srana. Sister, can I ask you one thing? Do you love that boy? Haman was momentarily at a loss for words at the unexpected question. Her bangs fluttered slightly. It wasn't the kind of question she had anticipated as she headed toward certain death. But perhaps she felt that, at this moment, it was the essence of everything. So, after smoothing her bangs, she answered, Maybe so. I still hate Char, and my disdain for the Federation government remains unchanged. Her usual stern, unyielding expression softened, as if admitting defeat. There was a hint of embarrassment in her smile. It's irritating to admit, but I suppose I do love that boy, Judo Ashta. The understanding of each other, or at least the catalyst for it. It must be something like that. Sister, don't say it. If wars started and ended because of love, the world would be a simpler place. Even if that's the truth, this war will end now. Haman declared the end of the war. It meant her own death. I won't ask you to take my place. Be happy. Those were the last words we exchanged as sisters. Chapter 1. January. Universal Century, 0089. The Neo-Zeon forces, having lost their deputy commander, Haman Karn, were now deeply divided. On one side were the hardliners, who insisted on continuing the armed struggle, and on the other were the moderates, who sought reconciliation with the Earth Federation. However, the peace treaty proposals rapidly drafted by the Earth Federation government after the war's end were clearly aimed not only at dismantling Neo-Zeon, but also at denying the autonomy of the space colonies entirely. Under the guise of reparations, the colonies would be perpetually exploited, a fact obvious to anyone. The terms were reminiscent of the Treaty of Versailles, from the First World War of the old century. Naturally, the military hardened its stance, and criticism of the moderates, led by the foreign ministry, grew louder with each passing day. When the amount of reparations under negotiation was leaked by the hardliners, their ideology became the consensus among the space noids, solidifying their position. The Earth Federation government must be defeated. How many Zaku units are left for escort? 4. No. Only 3 remain, Vice Foreign Minister. Chach. The pursuit is being led by Major Sinclair, isn't it? I suppose we should expect nothing less. A dark green space shuttle raced through the battlefield at full speed, trying to shake off the hardliners' pursuit. Inside the cockpit of the atmospheric entry-capable shuttle, a Komusai, Vice Foreign Minister Srana Karn, furrowed her brow. The plan had always been a precarious one. With the hardliners seizing control of Neo-Zeon and the rhetoric of total war growing louder, the moderates, including Srana, had pinned their last hopes on a direct negotiation with the Earth Federation on the surface to secure a comprehensive peace treaty. They believed that if they could establish the treaty as a fait accompli, public opinion could be swayed. Srana had volunteered to lead the negotiations, and her proposal was accepted. As a prominent figure among the moderates and the top-ranking foreign affairs official, she was the ideal candidate. No one opposed her nomination. Her status as a blood relative of the late Vice Commander Haman Karn was also seen as an asset in dealing with the Earth Federation. In fact, despite the Earth Federation's professed commitment to absolute democracy, the hereditary and privileged nature of its high-ranking officials meant that blood ties still held significant weight. Thus, Srana Karn was deemed suitable to lead the negotiations. Of course, securing a negotiation table did not guarantee success. The Earth Federation government was reluctant to pursue peace, and reaching a comprehensive treaty would be no easy task. However, Srana had managed to secure the cooperation of Brigadier General Manov, a pro-peace faction head within the Earth Federation military, and had begun to see a glimmer of hope for the negotiations. But time was running out. Srana's plan to descend to Earth had been rushed due to time constraints, and the insufficient concealment efforts had allowed the hardliners to catch wind of it. As a result, the hardliners had ordered the elite 31st Descent Mobile Suit Battalion, led by the brilliant strategist Major Sinclair, to pursue and intercept her. The Zaku 3 units escorting Srana's Komusai fired 3 shots from their beam rifles, attempting to slow down the pursuing forces. But as soon as they finished firing, a barrage of beams from the pursuers returned in double the number. The Zaku 3's mono-eye sensors reacted, but the mobile suits themselves couldn't keep up. One by one, the beams struck the Zakus. Direct hits. Shields shattered, arms were torn off, and heads were blown away. Finally, a single beam pierced through a cockpit. Amid the scattering debris of the destroyed Zaku 3s, the Zanzibar-class cruiser and its heavy mobile suit unit, the Rikdom Pluses, closed in. Though already a second-generation mobile suit, the Rikdom had undergone significant modifications, including its backpack, and their numbers overwhelmed Srana's remaining Zaku 3 escorts. As the Komusai entered their firing range, the Rikdom unit unleashed a volley of beam rifle fire. The beams streaked vividly through the black void of space. Beautiful, yet carrying only destruction. The remaining Zaku 3 units stood in the line of fire, shielding the Komusai, but they were quickly annihilated. 1, then 2. Their red flowers bloomed in the darkness. Just before the final Zaku 3 exploded, the cries of Sig Zeon echoed through the Minovsky particle interference, reverberating in the Komusai's cockpit. The dying screams of the soldiers cut like invisible knives into Srana's heart. As a bureaucrat responsible for governing the nation, what had she done for these soldiers who died shouting the name of their homeland? Worse, she had driven them to point their guns at fellow Zeon soldiers and be killed in turn. The guilt weighed heavily on her. Her brow furrowed, reflecting her emotions. Yes, both the moderates and the hardliners, the pursued and the pursuers, were all Zeon citizens who loved their homeland. Each believed they were fighting for the greater good, each claiming their own justice. Even among Zeon citizens, the divide between moderates and hardliners had led to conflict. Srana knew that achieving peace with the Earth Federation would be even more difficult. She harbored no naive illusions that mere dialogue could lead to perfect understanding or a utopian society. But humanity had fought too much. The physical, social, economic, and cultural exhaustion was overwhelming. What was needed now was a period of peace to rebuild. Understanding between people was difficult, but there had to be a compromise where mutual forgiveness was possible. Beyond that compromise, true understanding might be found. But it required effort. The same was true for nations. Srana turned to the Komasai's pilot, who was desperately maneuvering the shuttle. "Can you do it?" "I'll make it happen." Hearing his answer, Srana turned back forward without changing her expression. Her sharp eyes, visible through the raised visor of her helmet, stared straight ahead. "We can't expect any help from the Federation, can we?" Entering the atmosphere. The Earth loomed large ahead, and the Komasai's hull began to glow red from the heat. Immediately, violent vibrations from atmospheric friction shook the shuttle. To evade the pursuers, they had entered the atmosphere at a steeper angle than usual. The Komasai shook violently. "Ugh!" Srana let out a small groan. In a grassy field, a yak grazing on the pasture twitched its ears, stopped chewing, and slowly looked up at the sky. The shepherd boy followed its gaze. Against the panoramic blue sky and white clouds, a red streak shot across the horizon. As the yak let out a cry, the shepherd boy turned his attention back to the herd, urging them to hurry down the mountain. Winter days were short, and they needed to return before dusk. Chapter 2. Odessa, a port city facing the Black Sea, was originally the largest international port of Ukraine, known for its beautiful streets, including the Primorsky Boulevard, made famous by the film Battleship Potemkin. However, after the advent of the universal century, the discovery of some of the world's largest thorium and bauxite mines in the Ural Mountains transformed Odessa into a hub for mineral collection and distribution. Because of this, during the One-Year War, it became one of the most fiercely contested battlefields, and this latter identity is what remained most strongly etched in people's memories. December, Universal Century 0092. Even now, its strategic value remained unchanged, and the Odessa Air Force Base of the Earth Federation forces stood as a stronghold in the region. What set the Odessa Air Force Base apart from other military installations was the civilian-operated aviation academy co-located on its grounds, where young aspiring TMS, transformable mobile suit pilots, trained day and night. This is Second Lieutenant Adele Arisham of the Tangram training aircraft, requesting landing guidance. Over. Adele requested landing instructions from the control tower. At the Odessa Aviation Academy, students were assigned to various government agencies based on their field of study. For students like Adele in the rescue department, this meant being temporarily attached to the Federal Security Agency's aviation unit. Thus, in official settings or communications with air traffic controllers, he was required to use his official rank and name. The Federal Security Agency's aviation unit was responsible for search and rescue operations during maritime disasters. Rumors had been circulating that a rescue variant of the Zeta Gundam, renowned for its high-speed mobility, would soon be assigned to the unit. Adele believed he had chosen a good career path. Since his father was conscripted into the Federation Army during the One-Year War and died in battle, Adele and his mother had lived a modest life. While he had a strong desire to pursue education, the reality was that it was financially out of reach. So, when he learned about the Aviation Academy, where it not only was tuition-free, but students were even paid a stipend, his shock and joy were indescribable. 2 years ago, he had to explain to his mother, who mistakenly thought it was a military training institution, that it was actually a civilian program under the Federal Security Agency, focused on rescue operations. She had cried then while clutching his father's portrait. For Adele, the plan was to graduate from the Aviation Academy in 2 more years, join the security agency's aviation unit as an elite, and provide a decent life for his mother. This is Control Tower 1, 3rd Controller Claire Brownie, Tangram Training Aircraft. Please hold your position in the air for now. The slightly husky voice of Claire Brownie came through the speaker. Adele recognized her voice immediately. Claire, a student with short, curly red hair, had a refreshing appearance and was something of an idol among the control department students, even though she was a year below Adele. Adele switched the communication to video. A small window opened on the right side of the cockpit, showing Claire's neat face. Normally, Adele kept communications audio only to avoid distractions, but when someone as cute as Claire was on duty, he made an exception. Adele wasn't above a little lecherousness. This is Adele, Roger. However, please provide an estimated time for the hold. Shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. Adele, can you see the large aircraft approaching on radar? Yeah, I can see it. But is it okay to talk like this, using casual language and all? Most of the instructors are busy preparing for the arrival of that large aircraft, so today's training is pretty relaxed. Claire chuckled playfully as she spoke. Her quick wit and charm were likely why she was so popular, Adele thought. That large aircraft is flying unusually high for a regular flight. Is it some big shot from the Federation? Well, it is someone important, but probably not the kind of big shot you're imagining. What do you mean? See for yourself. It looks like it's descending. As Claire finished speaking, the clouds to the right front briefly swelled and parted. It was less like they were torn apart, and more like they were pushed aside as the Earth Federation Forces cruiser slowly emerged. With its central bridge flanked by catapult decks on either side and main engines extending elegantly to the rear, the ship created a graceful silhouette. The Trojan horse? Adele. You should probably call it a white base or a Pegasus class. Otherwise, the military cadets might accuse you of being pro-Zeon again. Claire's words were true. Adele considered himself a liberal, especially after he'd lost his father in the 1-year war. But his words and actions often came across as pro-Zeon to the other military cadets, earning him their disdain. Adele found it all rather petty. I think it's called the Ilneid. Is that Italian? What does it mean? It meant homeland or nest. But Adele didn't know Italian, so he let the conversation move on. Meanwhile, the Ilneid descended and aligned itself with the landing course for the first runway. However, its handling was more arrogant than even the Medea transport aircraft stationed at Odessa Air Force Base, befitting a military vessel. Feeling a bit of resentment, Adele brought his Tangram training aircraft as close as the collision warning system would allow and zoomed in on the Ilneid's bridge. The Pegasus-class cruiser, often compared to the Trojan horse, had its bridge designed at the head of the ship. On the captain's seat in the bridge, Adele could see a large officer in a red and black two-tone uniform. He appeared to be in his 50s, with a mustache and an air of authority, though to Adele, he looked more like a professional wrestler in a military uniform. Adele, you're getting too close. As Claire warned him, Adele quickly moved his aircraft away from the Ilneid. A military man, huh? Yeah, but he is someone important. I don't like him. Really? I don't mind him. Though I do hate war. Isn't that the same thing? Absolutely not. Claire was firm, but Adele didn't see the difference. Ah, the third runway looks like it's ready. Okay, you're good. Tangram aircraft, Adele, please land on the third runway. Still feeling unsettled, Adele guided his Tangram training aircraft to the third runway. Looking down, he saw that several other Tangram training aircraft had already landed there. It seemed that during the Ilneid's stay, all the Tangram training aircraft would be using the third runway. The third runway is so short. That was all Adele could think about. Raisa Crescent stowed her normal suit in her locker, then undid her hair, which she had tied up to put on her helmet. She gently combed through her long, tangled hair with her fingers. Her hair, a bluish shade of brunette, hadn't been cut in years except for occasional trims, and now reached down to her waist. Long hair was rare among pilots, making it a distinctive feature for her. Her strong-willed, or rather, self-assured expression was softened by her slightly androgynous face, with her hair being one way she expressed her femininity. She peered into the mirror on the locker door. Her plump cheeks and slightly upturned eyes gave her a calm, studious appearance. Raisa reapplied her lipstick lightly, satisfied with her reflection. She knew that darker shades would look too bold on her full lips, so she consciously stuck to lighter colors. Then she tied her hair into a single ponytail at shoulder level with a rubber band. She let out a sigh. Looking at it this way, everything seems fine. She tapped her reflection in the mirror with her fingertip. But that guy just throws me off. Muttering to herself, she closed the locker and stepped into the hallway. To conserve energy, the academy's air conditioning was kept to a minimum, and the winter air brushed against her skin. The dry air wasn't unpleasant, though. Glancing out the window, she saw orange trees planted in the courtyard, with the 3-story dormitory building beyond. Above it, the Ilneid's bridge peeked out. A week had passed since the Ilneid's arrival, but nothing had changed at the Odessa Air Force Base or the Aviation Academy. For an overachiever like Raisa, this was another source of frustration. The Ilneid was the flagship of the 8th Fleet, an assault landing ship of the White Base class. The White Base had become a legend during the One-Year War, serving as the mothership for the Gundam and playing a pivotal role in ending the war. The White Base class was, in essence, a symbol of the Earth Federation forces. Its captain was Brigadier General Manov, a prominent figure from the former AEUG faction, and one of the key figures behind the formation of the Londo Bell Task Force, alongside Congressman John Bauer. Raisa's dream was to be assigned to the Londo Bell Task Force, which was currently being organized. It was the unit where the heroic Amuro Ray, a new type, and the figure of her admiration, served. She wanted to be assigned to Londo Bell. To that end, she had worked harder than anyone else, achieving results she could be proud of. Her efforts were all recognized by those around her. That's why she'd wished that at least the military cadets at the Aviation Academy, if not all the students, could receive some words of encouragement from Brigadier General Manov. For military cadets, feeling acknowledged by a high-ranking officer was incredibly important. On top of that, a tour of the Ilneid would have been ideal. She had even hoped to get a chance to pilot the Gundam Mark II on board, but none of that happened. Seeing the ship so close yet out of reach was agonizing, and that agony was turning into irritation. Chapter 3. Hey! Say that again, why don't you? It always seems like I run into that guy when I'm feeling particularly irritated. I really wanted to avoid him. This was the worst possible timing. I couldn't hold myself back. I'll say it as many times as I need to. The Earth Federation's Earth-centric policies are the worst. I even said I can understand Haman's feelings. That guy, Adel Arashim, shot back at me with a voice as loud as mine. His ash-brown hair swayed as he spoke. I tried to think about how this argument had escalated to this point, but I stopped midway. It was too late now. There was no turning back. It really should have been something trivial. How stupid, I thought to myself. But I had no choice but to retort. Haman, you say? Are you siding with Zeon or something? That's exactly the kind of Federation Zeon mindset I'm saying is messed up. You're part of the Federation Security Bureau too, you know. Where do you think your paycheck comes from? Adel should have just backed down. No, I even thought he should back down. He wasn't much taller than me, and his build wasn't bad, but compared to our classmate, Orvis Boa, who was watching our argument, Adel looked tiny. Orbis, standing nearly 2 meters tall with a solid build from practicing judo, made Adel look like he could hide behind him completely. Though comparing Adel to Orvis, who had the gentle gaze of a teddy bear, Adel's softer features didn't exactly scream strong willpower. I know that. But does cornering and belittling people really solve anything? That was a harsh line. Both of you, cut it out already, said a student from the aviation pilot program, stepping between me and Adel. The timing was perfect. I think his name was Senri Suzuki, one of Adel's friends. He was aiming to become a commercial airline pilot, if I remembered correctly. Orvis also placed a hand on my shoulder and silently shook his head, urging me to stop the argument. We're too old for this kind of pointless bickering, don't you think? Senri adjusted his large, black-framed glasses and spoke in a strangely mature tone. In truth, Senri was the most mature. Though he was looked down upon by us military pilots for aiming to be a civilian pilot, he never let it bother him and always tackled things head-on. His catchphrase was, "I just love planes, that's all," and he delivered it with a light laugh. When Senri spoke like that, both Adel and I had no choice but to fall silent. Suddenly it was quiet. Senri and Orvis exchanged glances and smiled in satisfaction. At this point, Adel and I, the ones who had been arguing, just felt awkward. All right, it's over. Done. Before Senri could finish, an alarm blared, and the warning lights in the base began flashing red. What's going on? This is an air raid alarm. You've got to be kidding me. Adel's voice wavered at my mention of the alarm. Senri's expression was hard to read with the red light reflecting off his glasses, but it was clear he was flustered. But I was shaken too. I knew intellectually that this was an air raid alarm, but I couldn't process who or why, and my thoughts couldn't move beyond that. Naturally, I couldn't act either. A massive explosion shook the school building. Let's just get to the runway. Adel made a constructive suggestion. Yeah. Before I could even finish my response, Adel took off running. Orvis and Senri followed. Left behind, I had no choice but to chase after Adel. I should be the one leading the way. It was frustrating. Outside, it was a battlefield. The control tower was completely destroyed. Part of the school building had turned to rubble, and another explosion erupted ahead. Amid the blinding flames, Neo Zeon Dwages and Dom Pluses slid into the base. The Gundam Mark II and Jim II were desperately trying to hold them back, but long-range artillery fire from outside the base made it difficult to move effectively. What is this? What's going on? Even outside, Adel was bewildered by the unfamiliar scene. It wasn't just him. I, Senri, and Orvis were all frozen in place, staring at the panoramic battlefield. The roar of explosions and gunfire pounded our eardrums, and the smoke stung our eyes and noses. Is this some kind of training exercise? Don't be stupid. This is a real enemy attack. I snapped at Senri's offhand muttering, snapping back to reality. Another explosion sent a gust of wind whipping through my hair, and I hurriedly tried to hold it down. Finally, my thoughts started racing. Zeon's mobile suits, Odessa Air Force Base, the Ilnid. Ah, I see. Ilnid was a real white base, I realized once again. A military jeep came to a sharp halt in front of us, its tires screeching. A sharp-looking officer stood up from the driver's seat, shouting over the noise of the explosions. It was Instructor Kelly Schneider. "Hey, you lot! This place isn't safe anymore. Run to the training planes parked on the 3rd runway. What about you, Instructor?" The control tower was taken out in the first wave, so we don't know the situation. I'll check with Brigadier General Manoff of Ilnid. Depending on the situation, we might have to abandon the base. Hurry up. Yes, sir. After giving clear orders, Instructor Schneider sped off in the jeep, heading straight for Ilnid at full speed. Instructor Schneider was a talented pilot who had made a name for himself as an ace of a core booster unit during the one-year war. After the war, his liberal views clashed with the higher-ups, and he was relegated to a teaching position at the Aviation Academy. But now, in the midst of war, that turned out to be a blessing. His instructions were precise. As Instructor Schneider sped off, I grabbed Adele by the collar as he was about to run straight to the 3rd runway. "Are you an idiot? Why do you think Instructor Schneider told us to go to the 3rd runway? We need to get our normal suits first." "Oh, right. Ugh, get it together. Let's go." The 4 of us then took off running.